This conference will now be recorded.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Johnson, and I am your Constituent Services and Support Coordinator here at the Alliance. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our weekly webinar. We have Mike Ward, who is part of the Alliance team, to talk about the CARES Act, and then all of you who are our experts to talk about reflections on 2020, what has happened, what we've learned, and then I was thinking we could even dip our toes in 2021 and maybe talk about some things that we've learned this year that we might do differently next year. I know a lot of stuff has happened this year, so thank you all for joining. We will go ahead and start off with a moment of silence for the lives lost from COVID and just, everyone going into the holidays. And so we'll go ahead and take it a moment of silence now for those lives lost. Thank you. I will go ahead and yield the floor to Mike Ward, who will talk about the CARES Act and tell you all a little bit about it, which I'm sure you probably know a little, and then also answer any questions.
All right, I don't know who knows how much about it, so I'm going to start with the very basics. As most of you know, the Congress passed this huge CARES Act bill earlier this year, which passed a tremendous amount of money out to the states and local governments for various purposes. The state of Mississippi's legislature then turned around and, as part of their process of getting the CARES Act money pushed out the door, decided that they wanted to do something for nonprofits around the state and for food pantries around the state. So what the legislature did is they set aside $4 million in CARES Act money for nonprofits and another $4 million for food pantries. So for a total of $8 million. And they allocated that money to be divided between the state's community foundations, of which there are 7 scattered around the state. And they have divided up the state into service areas that cover all 82 counties. So no matter what county you're in a service area that's covered by one of the community foundations. The reason the Alliance is involved in this is because we had already had all of the community foundations organized into a community foundation network, which had done one big program already in Dow, Mississippi, that you may have heard of. And so when the community foundations got tasked with actually giving away this $8 million to nonprofits and food pantries, they got together and wanted the Alliance to act as kind of an intermediary between them and the Mississippi Development Authority, which oversees and administers the funding. So we worked with the community foundations and the Mississippi Development Authority, MDA, to come up with some regulations. That was all pushed out the door. I think this went active a little over a month ago. As originally set up, the program was to push out grants to nonprofits and food pantries of not more than $4,000 to reimburse them for expenses incurred that are directly related to the COVID pandemic and the impact of the pandemic on their organizations. And there was, I think, 18 separate cost categories that were eligible under the program. We made a case to the legislature that getting that many grants out the door in such a short period of time, because the money has to all be expended by the end of this year, was going to be a problem. So they came back and amended it, and now the applications can be up to $12,000 per nonprofit or food pantry. You can only have one application per organization as a general rule, although there's some exceptions to that. The exception to this: if you're a nonprofit that does just general programming of any sort, you can only do one application. If you're a nonprofit that also operates a food pantry, it may be possible for you to do an application both as a nonprofit and as a food pantry. It depends on your circumstances. You'll need to talk to your community foundation. And if you are an organization that operates multiple food pantries in multiple counties serving multiple locations, it's possible that you can qualify each of the food pantries as a separate applicant and get $12,000 per pantry. But each pantry has to serve a different location and distinct population. So that's the short version of it. We set up an online application portal, which is mscaresgrant.com. Everybody has to go through that portal. It's really a two-step process. You have to establish your eligibility through an eligibility quiz. Once you're eligible, you have to submit eligible expenditures and documentation of those expenditures, because this is a cost reimbursement grant. You have to have already spent the money. But if you can document your eligibility and document eligible expenditures, and there's still money available in the pot, then you'll get the grant. It's first come, first served. Some community foundations have had more applications than others, so I can't really give you a scan today as to who has how much money left or who's allocated how much money. The community foundation allocations were based on the population in the counties that they serve. So for instance, the community foundation for Mississippi in Jackson serves the central Mississippi area and almost all of southwest Mississippi. They got about $1.2 million from each pot of money from both food pantries and for the nonprofits. The Community Foundation of Washington County in Greenville, which only serves 4 counties, only got about $80,000 out of each pot. So it depends on where you are as to how much money is available to the community foundation that serves your county. So if you want to apply for CARES Act money, if you've had expenses that are related to the pandemic, if you want me to, I can read those off, but they're all listed at that online portal. Has got a link to the rules and regulations and everything. Then you can make an application. Now the deadline for qualifying or your eligibility is December 15th, so you have to move quickly. You can document expenses incurred between March 1st and December 30th of this year. And once you qualify your organization and you're eligible, you could turn in an application, I think, as late as January 15th, but you have to get eligible by December 15th. Again, it's a two-step process. First get eligible and then submit all your documentation for reimbursement. That's the short version. I'll take questions. I know there's been a lot of questions out there about the process. Whatever questions you got, I'll try to answer them.
If you have any questions for Mike, you can just go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hey, Mike, I've got a question. We have done our initial application before they lifted the cap.
Right.
So if we wanted to add to that, how does that process work? Is it just an entirely new application and they automatically negate the first one, or what do we need to do?
Last I heard, that was still under discussion about how they were going to do that. There's some things that have to do with the online portal software about whether it'll let you come back in once you've done an application, but they were working to fix that. My advice to you is contact your community foundation and let them walk you through the process. Because I since they worked on that software issue, I have not had a meeting with the Community Foundation Network since then, so I can't answer that completely, but I know they were working on it, and that there is going to be a process. I don't think it's going to require a new application. I think once you're eligible, I think it's just going to require you to submit additional documentation for that other $8,000, but don't hold me to that. Connect with your community foundation and see what they worked out about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, this is Dina Ray, and I just did all this yesterday and talked to, I think, 3 different community foundations in the process. So
Okay.
I can tell you what happened to me if you want to know.
Go ahead.
I had submitted the 4,000 already too, and they told, even though on my end it says that it is submitted or in process, when I finally got to all the right people, they said that it had already been approved. And I had been sent a link from them. This is how it all started, is I got an email saying you can now submit for the remainder amount, you know, like you're invited to submit. So I clicked on that link, but I could never edit my original one. And I was under the same impression you were, Mike, that you just edited the one you had or just changed the amount of money and added more documentation, but that is not how it actually happened.
Okay.
You actually had to submit a new application. However, you have to have that link first. So if you haven't gotten an email with a link saying, you know, click here and add it, there's a code that you have to add. And when you add the code, when you hit apply, instead of like going to your old application, you go to apply like you're just starting a brand new application. It does fill it in with all the, it's the same application basically, and it fills in all that stuff, but I had to just cut and paste from my original application. But it was quite confusing and no one really knew how it was supposed to go down yet at that time. So I think there is some confusion around it, but from what I was ultimately told by the Community Foundation of East Mississippi, which is it's their portal that they're using, they said their intent was that you submit one application the first go around, and then you can only get one application the second go around. But from a person's standpoint that was entering it, it felt like, well, that was 2 applications then. But that's what happened when I did it.
Okay, and you ended up dealing with the Community Foundation of East Mississippi. Is that who you were dealing with?
I dealt with the Community Foundation of Northwest Mississippi, the
Okay.
Community Foundation of Mississippi, and the Community Foundation of East Mississippi, trying to figure it out because it's a long story, but we have we're located here, but our work was being done in North Mississippi. And so we had a relationship with both the local and the one up north, but then it was the East Mississippi group that's using, it's their portal. So
Right.
they're the ones that know about the portal. So I ultimately ended up talking to them too. And that's kind of how it all rolled out, is I did have to do another application, but the opening thing that if you don't have that email inviting you to apply again, that's where I would start. It's saying, why haven't I gotten that? Because
All
you
right, well,
should have
Tammy,
if you'd already applied.
Yeah, well, Tammy, I think the answer for you then is to contact your community foundation if you hadn't gotten an email and ask them to send you the link so you can change your application to apply for the extra $8,000.
Yeah, I've gotten the email. I just didn't know quite what to do with it. So that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, good.
You're welcome.
We have a question in the chat, Mike. Well, first, Rebecca Nelson said, if you're in Northeast Mississippi, please apply. We have not received as many applications as we had anticipated. And her email is in there if anyone needs that. And then her question for you, Mike, is can you speak about civic organizations not needing to be registered with the Secretary of State?
I know there was some issues about this, and I think that when they went back and amended it to give us the extra money that we wanted per organization, I think they broadened the definition of nonprofit to include civic organizations. So I don't think that's as much of an issue as it once was when we started out. And again, you know, my apologies for having to give a little bit vague answers about this, but in all fairness, the Mississippi Development Authority still has not issued additional regulations to go with the change in the legislation that was done. So we're kind of, you know, flying by the seat of our pants here and taking it as we go. But as I understand it, they included, you know, anything like volunteer fire associations. You know, a lot of different civic organizations are now eligible to apply under the nonprofit side. So again, I would say if there's any doubt, contact your community foundation. They're going to be the ones that are going to be the final arbiter of all this, because it's community foundations that ultimately are going to say yay or nay on your application.
The next question is, what about churches and organizations that operate as food banks?
Churches are automatically 501c3 under the law, or considered nonprofit organizations. So they can apply as a nonprofit. They can also apply under the food bank. They have to do one or the other, I think, unless they're operating multiple types of programs that they're going to be applying for. The main rule of thumb here, one of the big no-nos is you can't do duplication of benefits. So, you know, if you're a nonprofit and you're also operating a food pantry, if you're eligible to come in both ways, you can't claim the same expenses under both categories. It has to be two sets of completely different sets of expenses and documented separately. Same thing with, there's a prohibition that if you got money through the payroll protection program or any other federal or state program to reimburse you already for this money, you can't ask for reimbursement again. You can't double dip. But, you know, as far as I know, there's no prohibition against the churches applying. You know, you can go either way as a nonprofit or as a food bank.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions or anything else? I mean, we have a lot of representatives from our hubs who work with the community foundations who might be able to share some things with the group if anyone has anything to ask or offer.
And again, those of you that were with the community foundation that are on the call, you know, work with your hubs and get the word out there, because there still are a lot of organizations that have not applied, and even at $12,000 a pop, we've got a lot of grants to get out the door between now and the end of December. And we don't want to see this money go back to some other use. We would like to see it get to the nonprofits and to the food pantries. Anybody have any questions about eligible expenditures or anything like that they want me to cover while we're at it?
Mike, I would like, if you could just summarize that, the coverable, the expenditures that you can be reimbursed for.
All right, I'm gonna have to pull up a different screen here and take a look at some things, but all right.
Thank you.
All right, so there's, like I said, there's about 18 different cost categories. And you're kind of left open to your imagination in some of these about what actually might be an eligible expenditure. Again, if there's any doubt, contact your community foundation, because they're talking to each other about what they're going to allow and not allow. But here's the list. 1, cost to increase social distancing to create social distancing measures. 2, cost to clean or disinfect areas due to COVID-19, including sanitizing products and cleansers. 3, personal protective equipment, which is items that have been identified by CDC as necessary, like respirators, face masks, goggles, face shields, protective eyewear, gloves, and gowns. So if you're in a situation where you had to go out and buy a lot of PPE, you can get reimbursed for that. COVID-19 testing, which is actual testing that was required for your staff and employees that are recommended by the CDC. You can get reimbursed for the testing cost. COVID-19 screenings for individuals who have, that you're trying to give services to, that have to enter your facilities or clinics or vehicles, again, that are involved in service provision. 6, expenses for technical assistance concerning mitigation of COVID-19 related threats to public health and safety. So if you had to contract for some technical assistance with regard to mitigation, you can reimburse that. 7, contactless equipment. 8, equipment or items designated to track employees who tested positive. 9, expenses for quarantining individuals. 10, reopening expenses that address COVID-19 issues. 11, expenses to facilitate teleworking to enable compliance with COVID-19 precautions. So if you had to get equipment and whatever or software to facilitate teleworking, that's an eligible expense. 12, expenses to facilitate distance learning, including technological improvements that are connected to closings. And again, about enabling compliance. Again, everything has to be tied to the COVID-19 issues. 13 is your food stuff, additional food delivery costs and expenses, including the purchase of food for individuals and households, such as senior citizens and other vulnerable populations. 14, expenses for caring of homeless populations to mitigate COVID-19 effects. 15, excuse me, individual grants to prevent evictions or foreclosure or otherwise assist in preventing homelessness. 16, individual assistance to individuals and households impacted by loss of income for emergency and necessary expenses. 17, expenses for employment and training programs for individuals who've lost employment or been furloughed due to COVID-19. And then 18 is expenses incurred if your business had to close or your business was interrupted due to COVID-19, which includes rent, payroll, or utilities. You can recoup some of those costs. So that's the list. It's a pretty broad list. Again, there's some work going on with the community foundations in terms of some interpretation with some of those categories. But my advice to you is, if you have an expense that you believe was related to COVID-19 or caused an impact from COVID-19 on your organization, run it up the flagpole and see if anybody salutes, because it's a pretty broad act at this point in time. And we're kind of, like I said, we're learning as we go. And our role and job is, if we can make it fit, we will make it fit. The only way we'll tell you no, it's absolutely it's a prohibited expense, or if it's something we think the auditors are going to come back and say, no, that's not going to work.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions or comments about the CARES Act?
Mike, clarifying question. You had said, I think, that you can't do it for items that you've already tried to claim. If it's in the same category, but you have had new or increased expenditures in that same line item, though, would that still be allowable? Meaning,
yes.
It's not looking for the same funding for the same thing, but it's the same type of thing. It just may have come at a different time, or been increased or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, let's take rent under the closure thing. If you got reimbursed for rent for March, April, and May through one of the other programs that's been out there, and then you come in through this program and apply for June, July, and August, then that's an eligible expense. You just can't apply for the one that you've already done. So you can still do it within the same line item or cost category. It just cannot be for the same expense.
Perfect. And then just to do a little bit of prognosticating, which is wholly unfair in the age of COVID, so forgive me, but do you anticipate any kind of strings being attached to this retroactively, meaning the legislature may come back at a future date and say, if you receive these funds, you are not eligible for something else that may come down the pipeline, or the community foundations not being able to fund something because you got funding through this? Does it seem like this is a very sort of, not one-off, but sort of discrete type of process that will have really no strings attached to it in any kind of negative way, that might have a nonprofit not want to move on this because of what the implications might be down the line?
Well, I mean, it's government money. And those of you who attended my grant writing classes in the past know that I've always talked about the fact that grants come with strings attached, and corporate money comes with rope attached, and government money comes with chains attached. So there are chains there, and you need to be aware of them. If you submit fraudulent information, or you double dip and don't declare it, there are things that you certify in the application process that they're true and correct, and they're not duplication of benefits and stuff like that. So if you commit fraud, yes, we can come, the state and anybody else, auditors can come back and grab all of you. But short of that, it ought to be a pretty straightforward program that if you're eligible organization, you qualify for the money, and if you submit eligible expenditures and you qualify for the grant. Again, take that with a grain of salt that it is government money. I don't see any downside to it in terms of future funding on down the line or anything. Again, this was kind of we weren't asked to do this. It was kind of given to us and said, you're going to do it, and we've been scrambling to do it best we can to put it all together and operate within the regulations that we've been given. But again, it is government money, so make sure that when you document stuff, it's stuff that if you and your auditors are comfortable with it, then it ought to satisfy the state auditors as well if they come back and audit a grant.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. I'll share
Well,
yesterday.
the other part of that, Dave, is I don't think the community foundations are going to let anybody go out on a limb here if they can help it. I may be speaking out a little out of school. I've got a couple of my community foundation people on the wire here, but I think that if there's anything questionable at all, the community foundation people will pull it out, and y'all have a conversation about it before it goes through. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mike? Or would anyone like to share anything about, maybe already submitting your CARES Act application and any wisdom that you can impart on anyone else? Well, I'll share I've been talking to the Gulf Coast Community Foundation over the past week and a half, and they are really trying to ramp up their external communication to their local nonprofits to let them know about how to apply, how to get in touch regarding questions. And so I will say from their perspective that they are hoping to, offer some trainings and making themselves available for questions this week and then the week after, or into December after Thanksgiving. So what they expressed to me that, I was told I could share with everyone is that they too have not received as many applications as they anticipated, and they weren't quite sure if it was because the application process was too difficult or maybe people weren't sure what expenses were eligible. So, I think that our community foundations are trying to make themselves available to help people through the process and really want to get the money in the hands of the right organizations in the state of Mississippi. I'll also share
Jessica,
Rebecca. Go right ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
No, I'm curious. Do you think that part of that also is that for those folks on the coast who've been impacted by Zeta, that they might be overwhelmed with other paperwork, and so that the decision between I've only got so many hours in the day and I can't fill out 1,000 applications, so they're having to prioritize which is the bigger pot of funds that would be most applicable? Did they express anything like that, or is it just other circumstances or reasons?
Yeah, what they shared is a little bit of both. So organizations now, being eligible for, if they've already submitted an application, being eligible for more money, just not having time to do it, to figure it out, is it worth it, sort of thing. And also on the other hand, the community foundation is extremely busy because they are handling a lot of the Hurricane Zeta, recovery with, distributing funds and assessing damage. And so they too are tied up. And so they're trying to juggle being available to disseminate this money and then also working on Hurricane Zeta relief. And it's what Paul Guichet, who is their executive director, shared with me yesterday, is how he has been so surprised that people still aren't even aware that the funds are available. So or that people are eligible for that funding. It's such a, like a civic organization, or we were talking about, places that just have a small food bank, not realizing that they too are eligible. So really, he brought to mind for me, just kind of letting everybody know, hey, you might be eligible. Call your community foundation and find out if you've spent any money that might be eligible. And Mike, you might have some information about that as well.
Well, part of the problem is this compressed timeline that we're having to deal with. We found out about the original allocation back in June, but it was late September, early October before we got any kind of guidance or regulations from Mississippi Development Authority. And then there's been some other auditors brought into the thing, and it's wait, and we keep telling them that they don't understand. It's not easy to give away $8 million within 6 weeks, particularly when you're giving it away in $12,000 chunks. They don't realize how many grants that is that have to be processed, and if you started out originally looking at it at $4,000 a grant, which where they started out, then that would have been 1,000 food pantries scattered around the state, and we just wasn't sure we had that many. The sheer numbers of it have been daunting for the community foundations. I think there is, some issues about getting the word out there. Those of you that if you're sharing it with your friends and your other people in your nonprofit networks, every community foundation website has a link to the application portal on their homepage that I'm aware of. So the link is out there. So just tell people to go to the community foundation website, and the link is there to the application portal. And once you get into it, I don't know if those of you that have done it, it's fairly self-explanatory once you get into it. It's not that difficult. And somebody who's done 600-page federal applications in the past, long time ago, it's a fairly simple process. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to take advantage of it. I can't imagine any organization that didn't have some COVID-related expenses that they could charge out to one of these grants. And if you don't have $12,000, don't worry about it. I mean, whatever you can document, get it in the door and get that money back into your organization, because you can use it for something else.
Hey, Mike, this is Dina Ray. Again, I just wanted to give some encouragement to anybody that hasn't actually done the app yet. It is so easy that I did it on an airplane. So the first one I did, I was actually sitting on an airplane, and I was able to do it without even having a computer from my iPhone. So now I happen to have, I will also say this is a perfect example of why it's a great idea to have good relationships with your community foundations, because I knew it was coming before it ever hit, because I did have some good relationships, and I have worked with, like I said, all 3 of those community foundations, and they've been wonderful to work with and super helpful. And a lot of questions they didn't have the answers to, but we collectively figured them out. And I think I might have been on the forefront of filling some of these applications out, because I did have that, forehand knowledge of it coming, and I was waiting for the links. So I already had all my documentation ready to roll for the minute that it opened. But it's not a hard application, and to your point, it's nothing like a normal federal or state application to fill out. So it's, even someone who's never done a grant before, I think could easily fill this application out.
Yeah, the hardest part of it is going to be actually just getting all your documentation together and scanning it in, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you anticipate that, if there's money left over, that they will roll on past the new year? Or does the legislature seem pretty hard set on, if it's not spent, just closing it off?
This is one of those federal programs, Dave, that is set to expire on December 30th by national legislation. So the state legislature really doesn't have any control over it. If you noticed, and if you're keeping up with all the transition stuff that's going on at the presidential level and everything, they're talking about a lot of the stimulus things that expire at the end of the year. This is one of those stimulus things that expires at the end of the year. Now, it's conceivable that the new administration could do something after January 20th that could reopen the money again. But as of right now, everything ends on December 30th.
Mike, do you see,
Go ahead.
do you think there's any chance that if it got to down to the wire and there was still a lot of money, that they would increase the ceiling from 12,000 to another number?
I don't think that there would be time to. That was done during a special legislative session, and as you know, the legislature won't be in session again until January. So the legislature won't be in session again until the program is actually expired. It would take national legislation to get an extension on the money. So I think we've got to operate under the assumption that it's a use it or lose it at this point.
Just to emphasize that, working with the federal government, he's absolutely right. Once we get to that point, if the money isn't spent, it doesn't, it goes back basically. So we have to spend it all. We come up against that problem every now and then too at the state commission with the federal government. It's like they'll have a pot of money and say, but you have to spend it within the next 2 months or that's it. And they're very serious about that. So yeah.
So what you're saying is we need to start a billboard campaign across Mississippi.
Yes. Use it or lose it. Apply it now. Yeah.
Yeah, getting the word out is going to be the most difficult part of it. And then, like I said, I think there might be some fear among smaller organizations about, well, is this outside of my reach, or how do I do this and whatever. So, there may be some education work that we still may need to do. Dave, we might want to think about doing a special webinar on the CARES Act around the 1st of December, where you maybe walk through an application or something like that. From the Alliance standpoint. But unfortunately, we've got to get our organizations qualified by December the 15th.
Hey, Mike.
On that note,
can I ask one quick question for national nonprofits? I don't work for a national nonprofit anymore, but I know a lot of the people in the area that will do. Are they eligible for something like this, like the local chapter of a national nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Since I've got statewide folks in the room, let me ask you this. If the Alliance were to do a get the word out campaign where, we gave you PR materials, if they don't already exist, and Mike, this will help from you, can you speak to, maybe this is the better question, forgive me, is there a get out the word campaign going on now where we just can empower, nonprofits who are not at statewide level to take action to get the word out, or, what kind of, can you speak to what efforts have already been put in place to get the word out?
Well, I mean, as you know, the Alliance, you've been sending some things out through the Spotlight and the things that the regular e-blast that we do. I can't speak to what each separate community foundation has done, or what the hubs may have done, whether they reached out to their 700 plus nonprofits or not. But I believe they at least made them aware of it. But again, maybe there's a way to do that a little more aggressively. That we might want to talk about. But I mean, you know how it is. I mean, you can put the information out there, but that doesn't mean if you build it, people are going to come. Sometimes it takes a little more than just putting the information out there. So I'm open to suggestions. I think the Community Foundation Network would certainly be open to suggestions. But I don't have the exact numbers right now, but I would assume there's still quite a bit of money that needs to be pushed out the door over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, and if I remember correctly, Rebecca, you both had a really great video that was shared out, I think, at our last weekly webinar. Do you remember who created that?
I think the Create Foundation put that together. If memory
Okay.
serves me correctly, that they put together a how to apply thing and just an infomercial type piece. I think the people at the Create Foundation are the ones that put that together in Tupelo.
If there's something like that that you could share, I mean, I know I would be happy to send it to every person I know in the nonprofit world.
Let me see if I can find or get access to it and see what it looks like. And if it's something that can be shared, we can go with it. Jessica, do you already have it?
Mike, yeah, Jessica has put it in the chat, and I have shared it with all the Central Mississippi Hub agencies. I sent it out last week, and Rebecca sent it out to all the Hub managers. So I know they have been sharing that. So I did send it out to the Central Mississippi Hub agencies last week on the 12th.
Okay.
If anybody has anything that you would, or have ideas about what the Alliance could do to help get the word out, please, I don't want to say take time today, because obviously that's something that you could just send to me. But if you have ideas, certainly email me and let me know. And I can certainly do whatever I can to help get the word out. That certainly needs to be a priority for everybody in December as we try to take care of each other. So definitely prioritize that as best I can.
Well, thank you, Mike, for your time and for answering all your questions, and everyone else for sharing your experiences. I posted in the chat the application training video that was mentioned that the Create Foundation put together. There's also a passcode required, and so that is in there as well. So if anyone wants to copy and paste that, you know, just to save it, because when we get off this call, that goes away. Dave, Rebecca just put a comment in there, if we could create a press release, the Hub directors could pass that on to our media contacts. Dave's shaking his head yes.
That's a good idea. And I'll get with our folks on the AFP side to see if they have a media campaign that's already either in the works or potentially in the works. I'm hoping that they are in the loop, but I will double check and see if our contacts are aware. So I'll take a look at that. Good suggestion, Rebecca. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's transition from that fun stuff to reflections on 2020. So, gosh, a lot of things have happened this year. It feels like more things have happened in 2020 than any other year in my life that I can recall. And so I never thought that I would be doing virtual meetings, working from home.
Yeah, let me see.
One second. Rebecca says reflection, rejection. Yes, rejecting 2020, but never thought I would be on this virtual meetings, by webcam, all of those things. And so I'm just curious, you know, what, if anyone wants to share maybe a takeaway, a positive takeaway from this year that you've had. And I guess I'll start. I avoided work from home jobs since I have been in my career because I wanted to work in the office, and I felt like the only way I could be productive was being surrounded by people. And I learned that I can work from home. And I'll tell you that having this virtual space and using, you know, chat features and virtual meetings helps keep me accountable. And it's just like, you know, being in the office. You know, it's not just like being in the office. The donuts aren't in the kitchen.
It's crazy though.
Pretty close. So that's been a great thing for me, is that I've taught myself and I've learned how to do that. So Would anyone else like to share some reflections or rejections for 2020?
Jessica, I'll share. And I love the reflection rejection idea. I'm going to take that with me from today. I'm the exact opposite of you, Jessica. I thrive working from home. Years ago, I had another career where I worked from home. And what I have found, my first thoughts as we went into the lockdown and I realized, how uncertain things were going to be, I thought I picked the worst year to go back to nonprofit, the worst. Because I had been at a very lucrative, profitable law firm through December of last year and had been out of nonprofit for about 18 months. And so that was my first thing was I thought, what have you done? However, staying the course, what I've realized is that I'm so blessed to be able to work from home. My one staff member and I are really grateful that we have a board that gives us the opportunity to do whatever we need to do to feel safe, And then the other thing I figured out is that working from home, I am able to set boundaries. I know a lot of people struggle working from home and they feel like they work all the time. But what I love is that, if I do have an idea or I need to send an email or something I need to feel like has to happen, I can just slip into my office and do that. Whereas I used to go to the office with a stack of sticky notes and napkins and stuff that I'd put ideas on. And now I can just, go into my office and I find being in my little bubble and my environment with my dog and my music and my quiet, I am more productive. I'm more comfortable and my focus is better. So it's been a real gift for me. And luckily I've got a terrific team that's pivoted and been able to keep things moving along. So these weekly webinars have been a real lifeline. Because like you said, it holds me accountable, it lets me connect with my peers, and it gives me something to look forward to. So it's been good for me.
Thanks, Tammy, for sharing that. Yeah, a dedicated space has been critical, being able to just hop over. I love that too. Anyone else want to share?
I'll share our reflections or just not just mine, but all of BGM's kind of had similar feelings because we've talked about it a lot within our organization. One personal thing that I've worked from home off and on throughout my career, so I knew I could do it. But one thing that was really enlightening for me in the midst of this COVID and seeing a lot of other people suffering, I realized that I had developed a collection of skills over my entire career that enabled me to be just as productive in my house on a computer as any office setting could. And so I was super grateful to know that doesn't matter what happens in the world, I'm still able to work from anywhere. So that was an aha moment in the midst of all this. But from an overall organization standpoint, I think for But God Ministries, we saw the best in humanity in all of this. And it was wonderful to see that even when people are suffering and in the midst of challenges that are very personal around the whole world, that no group was, immune from all this, that people still gave generously and they gave to critical needs, in our case, like food and housing and things like that. And usually in Haiti, that was, of course, viewed to be in the most desperate need. But it was shocking, really, to see how many people still gave over and above what you would ever expect in the middle of something like this.
So true. It was a wonderful thing to see communities and the state and just organizations come together to support their employees and support their neighbors and especially people. I mean that I didn't know, people you had never met before. It was such an amazing thing. So that's such a good point. Would anyone else like to share?
I'll go. Oh, Krista, I saw you come off mic. Krista, you go.
No, I want you to go first, Dave. Then I can put my thoughts together a little bit better.
Okay. I'm obviously, I've been in the nonprofit world now for, well, if you count schools, a while, but in the actual technical nonprofit sector, about 6 years. And certainly before had never worked at a statewide level. And really, when you're on the programmatic side, you really get in the day-to-day grind, and you're sort of very narrowly focused on, the programs you're operating or the people that you serve, which is absolutely appropriate. But what's been really interesting and meaningful and powerful is this last year has been an education in a way that was not only informative, but very profound in the understanding of how we as a sector are powerful and important and hold up our communities in ways that it's not just the big players. There's, we cover every aspect of people's lives in our communities. And the fact that we have really, I think, formed community within Mississippi, and the nonprofits and the foundations, and have sat together, frustrated together, and problem solved together, and thought about how do we go beyond what we thought we would be doing this year, and how do we adjust, and how do we support each other. And as a sector, I think there was something really powerful and beautiful about reminding us to kind of look up and look around. And although we are in service, that's what we do, is we serve our communities. It's also nice to feel camaraderie. And that's not something that I really appreciated. And I don't know if COVID, certainly with the role that I'm in now, my job is to connect with all of you, but I don't know if we had been as successful or had a shared conversation around that as easily as we have this year, by necessity. And so I'm hoping that we will not forget these lessons, and these opportunities, and this feeling, as we, God willing, move past COVID in the next year. So just things I'm thinking about.
Thanks, Dave. Really good thoughts. Krista, you are up next.
Well, this is probably more of an overall blanket statement, but I think what COVID has forced people to do, just because out of necessity, we've been a lot more focused on Zoom, on technology, and people who may not have paid as much attention before to what was going on, they were seeing a lot more through technology. And I think we've had some positive outcomes from that. Issues that are sitting and boiling, and finally people are saying, oh, I didn't realize that it was so prevalent, and have stood up to try and make things better. And I think that is a result of just paying more attention to other people through the technology, where they may have just watched TV before, or just watched their favorite show, and one of the things that came from it that I'm extremely happy about is that we have a brand new flag, and I just love that new flag. So, you celebrate where you can celebrate, and that's one of my happies for the year. And I think Dave is absolutely right. We probably wouldn't know Dave as well as we know him without being able to come together through Zoom. It's been a really wonderful thing, and I think we've gotten to know each other all a little bit better. And I know I see the people I work with a lot more now than I ever did in our tiny little small office, because a lot of us were traveling around the state a lot. And so it's been it's been eye-opening, and I really like working from home, but because actually I have connected more with the people at work now than I did then. But I do miss coming and visiting with you all, and seeing people and sitting down and actually having face-to-face conversations. Anyway, that was my reflection for the year.
Beautiful, Krista. Thank you. Well, does anyone else have any other reflection? We're almost at the end of the hour, but if someone has something else they would love to share, I would love to hear it.
I hope everybody has a very wonderful Thanksgiving. And I hope you eat too much and, and count your blessings.
Yes, we are starting Thanksgiving today at the Alliance. Our goal is to gain 10 pounds by next Thursday, other than Carla, who's shaking her head no. Not Carla. So,
I'm gonna stay away from that one as well.
well, then maybe it's just Jessica that's doing it. But I'm going to turn it over to Dave. Dave's going to make an announcement about what we have planned at the Alliance for December and 2021, which we are super excited about. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, Jessica. You all thought that because Jessica was hosting, I wouldn't get some shtick in, but you're wrong. I'm still here. Couple of things. So first off, we have listened, we have heard, we have done an enormous amount of reflecting and planning, and we are still doing it. But there are some things coming that I want to share with you. So first off, let's talk about December. One of the things you'll notice is this is our last weekly webinar for the year. And why is it the last weekly webinar for the year? Because December, we're taking some time off to get ready for 2021. So we know that everybody is working real hard. There's a lot of paperwork to do. If there wasn't a lot of paperwork to do before, God knows that there's even more to do this year. As Mike was saying, documentation. So you will see occasional announcements about partners of ours who are offering training and things that are coming up, but really the materials you'll see from us are going to be more focused on what's coming in 2021. So definitely still open and read, because we're going to be reaching out to you to try and get you enrolled. But December is going to be a pretty quiet month in terms of actively engaging with the Alliance. So thank you, you're welcome, and that's one thing. Let's talk about 2021 for a second. So I can't spill the beans on like everything, because that, well, one, I'd get in trouble, but two, we lose a surprise. One thing, the weekly webinars are going to pivot to monthly, because we are planning events, both in person and virtual, that will help fill the space in between. So we will still get to network and engage with each other, but we're going to include and expand our event offerings. So instead of trying to ask you to engage with us, you know, like full-time staff members, what we're gonna do is have one monthly webinar and then include a variety of new events during the month. So exciting new things are coming. It's not because we don't like connecting with you, it's that we wanna connect with you in new and varied ways. And, you know, test some things out, see what we can do. Excellence in Action. Many of you are familiar with this program. This is our certification program. We are doing it a lot next year, like a lot. You will be able to get EIA certified all throughout the year, and you'll be able to do it at different paces that suit your readiness. So we'll be doing it in a year-long model. We're going to have a 3-month model. We're going to be doing it at a boot camp style. We're going to be doing it all the time. So you're going to see a whole lot about excellence in action. And the other thing is, because we have received so many phone calls, even in COVID, about, I want to start a new nonprofit. How do I do that? We are actually going to be starting a program to help people launch nonprofits. That will be a year-long program that guides them from should I even exist to how do I stay out of jail, and then includes consulting, coaching, and mentorship through the entire process that takes them from I have an idea to I am operational. So we are very excited to have that rolling out. More details to come. So if you know folks who are interested, we now have an answer and a solution to that. So those are just two things that are coming. And I promise you, Jessica, myself, Carla, and the rest of the team are digging through over 120 different training requests, options, types of content, to figure out how we can get as much training out there as possible. So I'm telling you, 2021, y'all, it's going to be a crazy, fun, exciting year, and we look forward to engaging with you. Back to Jessica.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we really are. I'm personally very excited about 2021. We're going to have a lot of great things and see everyone more in various different ways and not just this way, which I love. So thank you everyone so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you again soon, maybe this year, but definitely in 2021. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your holiday season and have a wonderful day. I am thankful so much to all of you as well. Bye, everyone.